This is Tarheel Talk, an in-depth look at the issues and people making news in North Carolina. Here's your host, Sonya Williams.
Hello, and thanks for joining us. When it comes to Greek mythology, Medusa is perhaps one of the most intriguing characters. She was considered a monster with a hideous face, snakes for hair, and she was cursed so that anyone who looked into her eyes turned into stone. But she wasn't always that way, and today's guest has drawn from that story of Medusa to create an engaging trilogy entitled Set in Stone. And joining us now to tell us more about this project is its author, R.C. Berry. R.C., welcome to Tarheel Talk.
Thank you for having me.
Now, for people to really appreciate and understand your work, they have to know a little bit about Greek mythology. Talk a little bit about, and the story of Medusa in particular, but talk a little bit about Greek mythology and the underworld, if you will, that it created, and how that was your inspiration.
Well, the good thing about the books is you don't really have to have a vast knowledge of Greek mythology. Just about everyone, no matter who they are, what their background or education is, they've heard of Medusa.
Right.
Everyone knows the story, or at least the version of the story that Hollywood portrays. So that was my inspiration, because in school I loved Greek mythology. I think I was the only person that was excited about it. And even after the lessons were over, I wanted to look further into it and check the libraries, and there wasn't enough information for me about it. So I went to outside sources to learn more and more about the different stories. I loved any kind of mythology or folklore that kind of explains why things are the way they are today.
So talk a little bit about what prompted you to write about Medusa in particular.
It's a funny story. I was actually writing a completely separate story, completely separate series, and my best friend and a fellow author of mine, May Torres, she came to me and started talking about writing, because until that point I had never let anyone read what I wrote, and she had a similar problem, and that prompted us to kind of feed off of each other, because we were so close. We trusted each other. So we went back and forth with the stories that we were currently writing, and we got into the subject of strong women in history, and just how stories, not very often do they favor very strong women. A lot of times they're either considered monsters, or it's a lot of negative connotation towards very strong women. So we started talking about different women, like Eve, the first woman, and how it's she's portrayed in the Bible. And we kept going through, and Medusa just popped into my head, and I said, what about Medusa? Everyone knows the story, but what if there was a different reason for this? And we kind of got into the culture of how women were seen in ancient times, and how especially rape victims were portrayed, or what they had to go through. So the stigma that kind of followed that got me thinking about the story, and it got to the point where I couldn't even concentrate on what I was currently writing. I had to put it aside and start on this.
Okay, so and the first installment of your book is Set in Stone, the life and the death of Medusa. Tell us a little bit about this without giving too much of the story away. Just give us the basis of this book.
I wanted to go through the story of Medusa, not deviating from what everyone already knew about her, but I wanted to take it back further. So before the snakes, before the curse, I wanted to show a young woman, because a lot of the ancient authors, they all kind of agree that Medusa was originally beautiful.
Right.
She was very beautiful. And it varies from there. Some authors say, she was beautiful, but she was also very vain. Some say she was beautiful, but, she was devoted. And it kind of, everyone has their side of the story to tell. So I wanted to capture her as a young woman, and as a young woman that kind of gets thrown in with the immortals, the Olympians. And it's, kind of the classic story of the young woman who goes to Hollywood. So here she is with all these people and this place where all of your dreams can come true and every wish can be fulfilled. And it just kind of shows you how a lot of times young people can get in over their heads in a situation like that. So I wanted to take it through her life and death, because originally that first book was going to be all there was. It was not originally supposed to be a trilogy.
Wow.
So I started with that one, and as I got closer to the end of it, I decided I wanted to take it even further.
Mm-hmm. And these books, and we're saying it's a trilogy, you have the first two, the third one will be released shortly.
Yes.
These were years in the making. It wasn't like you just sat down and said, I'm going to write this, and wrote it. These books, they took some time and some thought.
Yes, the first book, surprisingly enough, less time and thought. The idea hit me, and it was so powerful that I had to write it right away, and it actually took me 5 months to write that.
Wow. The first one.
The first one. The second one, considerably longer, because once I finished with her death in the first book, it was completely on me and my imagination as to where to take it, because her death is where Greek mythology stops us cold. So it was a little bit harder, because I considered, oh, you know, what if the audience doesn't like it? You know, there's just so much to consider with that. So that took a considerable more amount of time, but it's about 4 years for the two of those books collectively, about 4 years in the making.
How can people find out more information and possibly order copies of your book?
The best way is the website. It's setinstoneseries.com. After this trilogy, I do plan on continuing the series with some of the other characters in the book getting their own stories. So I just wanted to lump it all together. So there's links to find out more about the books, buy them. Also, there's a link to the Indiegogo campaign. We're now trying to fund the official book trailer for the series, and it's going to be an extended trailer, so a little bit more than your 30-second, you know, blurb. So, but yeah, website is the best way.
Okay. Well, we're going to take a break. We'll talk more in just a minute.
Okay.
All right. We're back with more on Set in Stone after these messages.